I want to play you one Holocaust survivor, her message. I want you to listen to her message really closely.
When I see what's happening around the world, I think that people start ignoring it, or people say it didn't happen. I think, especially the young generation, that is part of history. Unfortunately, it did happen, and it should be remembered, and it shouldn't be repeated, which can easily be. The way when you listen to the news now, today, it can easily happen again. People should learn that everybody is equal, that people are the same, that in every ethnic group, in every religious group, there are good people and bad people. You don't put everybody under the umbrella, I don't like Muslims, I don't like Jews. To have a free, open mind. You see, I spoke to a young German student I met a few years ago. I was in the South Island. He was a backpacker, a very nice guy. And he saw my number. And he said, oh my God. And he started crying. And I say, hey, it's too late for crying. It's not your fault. He said, yeah. You know, I'd asked so many times my grandparents, what did you do during the war? I never get an answer. My parents won't talk about it either. I felt sorry for him because he carries the feeling of guilt. What worries me that very many, more and more people say it never happened. And the other thing is to teach the young generations that it did happen. It's part of us, part of history. And not only Jews are involved, I think the whole humanity is involved in it. It's not only Jews who have suffered. I think the whole humanity suffered because of that.
That was probably one of the most incredible pieces of film that I caught because she spent time. Her whole story's online. What is her message? It's happening. It'll happen. It's happened. Humanity, in my opinion, she's saying humanity is just going to do this again. And look, it's happening again. And it's happening against the Muslims in Palestine, in Gaza. It's happening again. What a powerful clip that is. If she were alive today, she would be devastated. And most of them that I have watched, and I could cry at this.
Are these the neighbors that you want in your city? No. These are the criminal migrants that Kamala Harris brought into your community. And as swiftly as they came, Donald Trump will send them back.
Und ehrt das Andenken dieser 7 Gefallenen.
I won't. Most of them that I watched, and I have been watching because I'm going to do a project on it, all have that message not to do this again. And it just keeps happening and happening and happening. Hang on. Hang on. I need a deep breath. Because it is just happening. And it doesn't stop. And when I say humanity is so flawed, we are. We are taking every other species with us, with the climate crisis and the environmental crisis and overshoot. And then you watch what happened to these people and what they talk about, the inhumanity that they suffered. And you see what's happening in Gaza And what other countries, what the Chinese did to the Uyghurs. I don't, you think you're just not made for this fucked up planet. And I'm sorry, those videos really get to me because these people and what happened and what they explained, the inhumanity and the horror, and then what is happening in the United States. We don't know what's happening in those prisons. We don't know where people are being disappeared to. We don't know. I'm sorry. And then we get to Stephen Miller.
Stephen Miller is a Nazi and he is a sociopath, and he is the one that actually is not lazy about breaking the law and pushing all of this shit through, because he is a little insecure white supremacist who I believe even his own parents must have hated him.
This motherfucker. How? And I know how, because he's sick. How is this guy doing this? How is he whispering into Donald Trump's ear, the orange turd? How are these people following the playbook? Why are American Nazi movements growing again? Why? And it's not, of course it's not just against Jews. It's against Muslims. It's against brown and black people. This stuff is insane. But he is horrible. And I'm going to tell you why he's horrible. And there is an article we're going to look at. He has an Eastern European Jewish history. How does that happen? But yet we're asking the same question about how has Israel become how it became. He's been around. He's definitely been around. I mean, he's the driving force between family separation. He wanted it to be used as a deterrent to asylum seekers. He pushed to end temporary status for Haitians and Salvadorians, Hondurans, and others. And now what is it? 70 plus countries they're going to not have visas come from? Yeah. He wants to end that diversity visa lottery, which he's ending. He's ending it. And he's a white nationalist.
This is a country of immigrants, and our family were immigrants. In fact, we were refugees. If my ancestors had not immigrated to the United States when they did, if they'd waited a few more years till 1924, the door would have been shut. My parents would have gone up the crematoria chimney. I wouldn't have been born, my sister wouldn't have been born, and certainly Stephen would never have existed.
There were leaky emails that were obtained by some people that said that he was promoting horrible things like to do. But I want to go into like this whole thing of the Great Replacement and how he fell for this. He's calling it what? Civilization defense. It's disgusting. So he really is. He really does represent white nationalism.
Rarely has there been a more toxic, grotesque, dangerous, stupid, venile, horrific, and when they're smart for evil group of people ever assembled. And even in that group, Stephen Miller stands out as one of the just singularly grotesque and repulsive. And this footage from him that emerged from Duke University when he was a student there. Excuse me, this is Santa Monica High. This is before he's even in college. This is in Santa Monica High. This guy was always what he is. And Jeet here tweeted this video out. He said it perfectly. He said, you can learn a lot more about modern conservatism by watching this clip than reading Kirk and maybe Oakshott. He mentioned a couple of other.
You mentioned Goldwater, the conscience of conservative, maybe.
Well, I don't know about that. But at any rate, this is what it's about. This is the privilege. This is the aggrievement. This is the racism. This is the classism. This is just genuinely being a disgusting, miserable person and wanting others to suffer too. Stephen Miller, Santa Monica High, excuse me.
Am I the only one who is sick and tired of being told to pick up my trash? And we have plenty of janitors who are paid to do it for us.
There it is. And there are the roots of this administration's terrorism of immigrants.
Heather Cox Richardson spoke about that is where this little shit, the return of MAGA's favorite forbidden book, what an apocalyptic French novel about a migrant invasion reveals about the worldview of nationalist conservatives. Person at what humanity does to each other and what they are doing to every single living thing and how vicious and horrible. Not long ago, a book partly like this would have been unthinkable. A Washington celebration of one of the most notorious French novels ever written. But on a frigid December night with some 50 people, when was this written? December 11th, okay. With some 50 people crammed into Butterworth's, a Capitol Hill restaurant that was favored by MAGA, favored by MAGA elite, believe it or not, to celebrate the release of, or the re-release of, The Camp of the Saints, which had gone out of print in English decades ago. The dystopian novel by the French author Jean Raspail depicts the destruction of European civilization by barbaric migrant hordes that arrive uninvited by boat. It has been mostly reviled since its publication in 1973, but prominent figures of the French right have hailed it as prophetic, including Marie Le Pen, who first read it at 18 and keeps a signed first edition in her office. The novel has also influenced two architects of Donald Trump's immigration policies. Stephen Miller, the current deputy chief of staff, recommended it in emails to Breitbart news reporters, and Steve Bannon, the president's former consigliere. He makes frequent reference to it until its retranslation and republication in September by a new publishing house called Vauban Books. The Camp of the Saints has been like Samizdat. Worn English leather editions circulated among many hands. When Bannon suggested a few years ago that I read it, and that is the author here, that I read it, I realized that a print copy could cost $200 or more. My new edition cost $25 from Barnes & Noble. And now here it was, being handed out at the party at Butterworth's, put on by the publishing house to guests sampling beef tartare on crostini. As they sipped their cocktails, Ethan Rundell, who translated the novel and is the editor-in-chief of Vauban Books, read from a 2011 essay in which Raspail reflected on his novel's notoriety and relevance. Raspail thought that Europe had not heeded the warning and predicted that come 2050 there will be but hermit crabs living in France, of all different origins, all living in the shells cast off by the representatives of a species forever vanished but once known as the French. But, Raspail continued, there was hope among the so-called isolates, resistors who insisted on the preservation of European culture. There is another hypothesis that these last isolates resist, so far as to engage in a sort of reconquista. The guests juggled their drinks and hors d'oeuvres in order to applaud. Despite the pleasantness of the surroundings, perhaps because of it, a hollow disquiet I've had since I finally read The Camp of the Saints for myself started to feel even worse. I do not believe in suppressing books, this one included. The Camp of the Saints is not a good novel, but it's an important one. Dystopian fiction helps structure the political myth. Political myth helps structure policy. In the same way that The Handmaid's Tale looms over abortion politics, The Terminator lurks over artificial intelligence, The Camp of the Saints hangs over immigration politics. For a small but important stratum of right-wing thinkers and politicians, it illuminates much about the worldview of nationalist conservatives who are ascended in America, France, and many other democracies. The problem is what the light shows: the profound fear that European American civilization, which in this view is inseparable from whiteness, faces an existential threat from migration, and that the extraordinary measures can be justified in response. The Camp of the Saints is an apocalypse story. Its title is borrowed from the book of Revelation in verses about Gog and Magog, the satanic hordes who arrive at the end days. Their numbers is as the sand of the sea. They went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city. In the novel, the Camp of the Saints is Europe. Gog and Magog is a migrant fleet, 1 million strong, that sets sail from India. The novel's infamy is due to its description of this horde as a mindless mass and as the beast. It does not have young, but monster children. It reeks of excrement for miles. The emigrating Ganges stunk as never had carnal India stunk before. Its members are shameless people packed so closely together. Shades of the Holocaust? Over the bodies, in between breasts, buttocks, thighs, lips, fingers, ran streams of sperm. The mass had essentially one speaking member: the coprophage. The coprophage, literally shit-eater, who leads the fleet while his demonic and deformed monster child sits on his shoulder. It was thus that in shit and lust, but also hope, the last chance armada pushed on towards the west, Raspail writes. He affords the foreigners no humanity whatsoever. They are on par with zombie or space aliens. Raspail, who died in 2020, was a writer mostly of travelogues who won some of France's most prestigious literary prizes. By his account, the idea for the novel came to him when he was staying in a large villa overlooking the Mediterranean, and an unshakable question occurred to him: and what if they came? His defenders and his critics are too obsessed with his grotesque descriptions of the horde. The novel isn't directed against migrants, it's directed against French people, Rundell told me. They were almost generic threats that appeared on the horizon. The book, he said, it's not about the fall of the West because the West has already fallen. It just doesn't know it. It's a revealing. Raspail does indeed spend most of his novel skewering French elites. They are so addled by aspirations to universal humanitarianism, by guilt over colonization, even by Catholic social teaching about immigration, that they invite their own destruction. They cannot see that the migrants already in France are a fifth column that will aid the invaders in their quest. In the novel, the country's hapless president notes that, quote, there will still be genocide, but we're the ones who will disappear, unquote. One of Raspail's heroes replies in the affirmative: we'll die slowly, eaten away from the inside by millions of microbes injected into our body. The French army, thoroughly rotted from within by self-hatred, abandons its mission and deserts rather than open fire on the migrants, the deserters. What people say they admire about Raspail in his prescience. The Atlantic's 1994 cover story about global demographic trends opened with a discussion of the Camp of the Saints, a controversial and nowadays hard to obtain novel. Eric Zemmour, the right-wing French pundit and former presidential candidate, called Raspail a Cassandra who foresaw the great replacement of Europe's people by their counterparts from the global south. the new Jews. My words. In 2022, Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, gave a speech recommending the camp of the saints to anyone who wants to understand the spiritual developments underlying the West's inability to defend itself. Over the past decade, uninvited mass migrations of people to Europe, many of them by boat, and to America via the southern border, have prompted debates that Raspel anticipated. Some humanitarians think that the borders should be effectively open to all who desire asylum. Policymakers in the European Union and in the Biden administration dithered in dealing with mass migration. Raspel was wrong, however, in his suggestion that the servants of the beast would have made migration uncontroversial. In the novel, he says that France greedily swallowed the anesthetic. When the time came to cut off both her legs, she would be good and ready for the operation. In reality, migration and cultural anxieties have become the new fault line of politics in the West. Ordinary people recoil at images of border chaos here and in Europe. They lodge protest votes against the politicians responsible for the mismanagement and force them out of office. At the same time, many millions of people have assimilated through ordinary channels without heralding the end time, including, I think, myself, a son of Pakistani immigrants to America. Raspel's dehumanizing depiction of migrants is impossible to set aside. It's very powerful for its imagery, so one cannot unsee these images once one has imagined them. Corina Stan, a Duke University comparative literature professor who has written about the Camp of Saints, told me the invasion novel was an established genre when Raspel wrote. But his, according to Stan, offered a vision of migration that evoked a powerful emotional response. It inspired fear, and that fear could be used for political purposes. The novel's influence has grown in spite of its aesthetic qualities. Even the French characters, who are granted humanity and the power of speech, are thinly constructed. They are either loathsome liars or right-minded dissidents. The heroes of the novel seem to be Raspel in various costumes. Here, a literature professor or a naval captain. There, a junior minister or a duke, all of whom happen to have the same some of the centuries-old ancestors who battled the Ottomans or other invaders. Many of the villains are self-deceiving clergymen, politicians, and journalists who refuse to recognize their impending doom until it's too late. Most of them meet horrific, violent deaths. Their female partners are typically raped before being killed. The dissidents are unable to forestall the apocalypse, but usually achieve some catharsis by killing migrants or collaborationists. One hero, the captain of a cargo boat, plows through Indian migrants whose boat capsizes, killing 1,000 of them. I feel very confident as a professor of French literature that this is not a good novel, the Stanford scholar Cécile Alday told me. From a literary standpoint, the narration is not well organized, the style drags you down, the metaphors are completely outlandish. The impending apocalypse swamps all other novelistic considerations. There's no interiority, there's no character development, there's no narrative arc except this invasion, Alday said. One of the oldest characters is Monsieur Hamadura, a man whom Raspel describes in a separate essay as a native of Puducherry, of the most beautiful Dravidian black, who despises his fellow people of India, kills many of the invading migrants, and is welcomed by the Last Stand colony at the end of the novel after observing. In my opinion, being white is not a question of skin color. It's a state of mind. This is a destabilizing idea. If civilization is a state of mind attainable by the dark skin, then migration is not a prelude to disintegration. Yet any such suggestion is explicitly contradicted by virtually everything else in the novel. At one point, Raspel writes that those cheering miscegenation were speaking in the name of death. Only a white woman can bring a white baby into the world. The bombs fall, the heroes are annihilated. France is the first domino to fall. By the novel's conclusion, the death of the civilized world is imminent. Rundell, the translator of the new edition, told me that the book had been unfairly caricatured during the years when it was largely unavailable. This profoundly dishonest anti-literary sleight of the hand, drive a book out of print, assign it a deeply discrediting reputation, and then use it to score political points against your enemies was among the reasons we thought it was important to give the book a second life. For those who were especially motivated, the book had gained influence even before copies were easy to come by. A recent New Yorker profile of Curtis Yarvin, the far-right pro-dictatorship thinker admired by J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel, recounts a conversation between Yarvin and Renaud Camus, the French author of the influential pamphlet The Great Replacement. Yarvin broke down crying while discussing the camp of saints, saying, "I want my children to die in the 22nd century. I don't want them to experience some kind of insane post-colonial Holocaust." The President of the United States employs similarly apocalyptic language about migration. Trump calls for repelling an invasion by immigrants who are poisoning the blood of our country. ICE is luring new recruits for the president's deportation campaign with the slogan, "Defend the Homeland." The camp of the saints is just one way that nativist francophone right has influenced its American counterpart. The American right may not know Renaud Camus by name, but they are certainly well versed in his arguments that a great replacement of natives is underway. One of the administration's first executive attacks was an attempt to abolish birthright citizenship, despite its guarantee by the 14th Amendment. After an Afghan national allegedly shot 2 National Guard members in Washington, D.C. last month, killing one, Trump called for reverse migration, a borrowing of the French concept of remigration. An idea that is also attractive to German nationalists at the AfD party. The haunting image of immigrant-induced Armageddon is influencing not just America's domestic politics, but its foreign policy too. On December 4th, after the Trump administration published its national security strategy, which was glossed over great power competitors such as Russia and China, but trained its ire on Europe, which we've all seen. The continent's economic decline is eclipsed by the real and more stark prospect of civilizational erasure because of cratering birth rates and migration policies that are transforming the continent and creating strife and the loss of national identities and self-confidence. This administration fears that the continent will be unrecognizable in 20 years or less, and calls upon Europe to remain European, to regain its civilizational self-confidence. These declarations have consequences. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has instructed American diplomats abroad to agitate for more restrictive immigration policies in the countries hosting them, according to the New York Times. The Trump administration is not isolationist. Rather, it wants Europe to be on its side in what it sees as the new class of civilizations. There are deeper difficulties with the importation of this European style of blood and soil nationalism. America is a much newer country, an accretion of various mass migrations. There was widespread and occasionally violent opposition to the migration of Germans, the Irish, the Eastern Europeans, of Catholics, all of whom were eventually integrated into the body politic. You can see this reflected in the leaders of the Republican Party. Dump himself is the grandson of a German and the son of a Scottish mother. 2 of his 3 wives, who gave birth to 4 out of his 5 children, were born in Eastern Europe. Rubio is the son of Cuban migrants. Vance is proud to be a Scots-Irish hillbilly whose family has been buried in cemetery plot in eastern Kentucky for 5 generations. His wife, Usha, the mother of his 3, soon to be 4, children was born in California to highly educated migrants from Andhra Pradesh in India. Because of that simple fact, and notwithstanding of her own educational and legal accomplishments, she's been subject to vicious attacks by white supremacists such as Nick Fuentes. The point is not that the Trumps, Rubios, and Vances are not really authentic Americans. The point is that they all are. Whatever the devotees of the camps of Saint might say about their genealogy. Oh boy, did we know about that book? I sure as shit really didn't. I really didn't. And I don't want to read it. I don't want to read it. But I thought, here we are. Here we are. And that is why I call Stephen Miller a Jewish Nazi, because he has Eastern European roots, and anybody in Eastern Europe that was left after 1938 that didn't immigrate went to those concentration camps, of which I think all of them in this administration would love to replicate.
The light will defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. They cannot imagine what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us. Because we stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble. And to those trying to incite violence against us, those trying to foment hatred against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness, you are jealousy, you are envy, you are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity.
Last year, or what was it, 2 years ago, I was saying, my goodness, when are they going to have firing squads at the border?